What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another edition of the Jays for Days podcast. I'm Josh. He's Josh. We got Jays Jumpers, Jaron Jackson Jr.'s, John Morant's, Joe Johnson's, Ja Raffs, and Jimmy Butler's, of course. We've got Jays. We got him for days. Josh, how you doing?
James Harden's getting added this week too.
Yeah, you be my guest. I will not partake in that. You will not hear me. You will not hear me add a guy to the. That is disrespectful to Jimmy Butler.
That's why he doesn't have a semi-permanent position. This is temporary.
See, I'm not sure. I'm not sure James Harden. Two good games from James Harden in the playoffs is gonna. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet.
All I know is
in Game 7, when they need James Harden to have a good game and he's 3 of 12, come talk to me.
All I know is they would be out of this series if he didn't deliver.
That's fine. That's fine. But in Game 7, when they need him, he will not be good. That is how this is going to happen. Because that's how it always happens. Not possibly, 100% of the time. When a team needs James Harden in a closeout game in a playoff series, he does not show up 100% of the time.
So far. He also hasn't done this in a postseason, I would argue.
We're talking about 2 games, dude.
Yeah. Well,
and he was bad in the first series. So we're talking about 2 of 8 games that he's been good. Congratulations. You make $40 million a year.
Yeah, I mean, it's still...
Yeah, you could say whatever. You could say whatever you want to. I am not hopping on the James Harden train. Not for a single second.
You know I'm not a James Harden guy. All I know is that one of those 2 stars completely lost their confidence in the fourth quarter, and one of those stars hit the 2 shots to save the Sixers season potentially and make sure they didn't go down 3-1. And the first guy was Embiid, and the second guy was Harden. And what he's doing with John Howe, I was very,
but
very
being better than Joel Embiid in a playoff series is also not
a very high
because
bar.
He's horrible in the playoffs too. So, which is the fundamental issue with Sixers.
Sure, right. They haven't done this before, and that's the. And Doc Rivers, you can tell Doc Rivers is stressed about the fact they haven't done this before.
Correct.
Because it's not pretty, but here they are at 2-2. He's delivering so far, which is all you can ask. So far, he's showing up, and yeah, he wasn't great the last 2 games, but they needed that game, and he got it for him. So I'm adding James Harden.
And the glaring thing that no one will talk about is this: the series would also be over if the Celtics had a competent head coach. Joe Mazzulla is horrible, and they should have won both of those games that they've lost this year. The series should probably be over, even with James Harden's performances. And it's not that James Harden doesn't get credit for the performances. I'm not going to great job. I'm just it's a little bit like when people are like, man, Russell Westbrook might be good for your team. It's like, no, he just had a triple-double in the regular season because he does that every once in a while. He's James Harden. Now, the fact that he was really good in 2 of 4 games, and that's an irregularity, that's the nucleus of the issue for me.
Sure.
I mean, Jason Tatum has been good in 2 of 4 games, and people are blasting Jason Tatum.
Right. Because the Sixers haven't. Now, you could argue they were actually really close to winning a championship because of that Kawhi shot. But this iteration and Embiid in general has never made it out of the second round.
Correct.
Right. So it's all relative, as we like to say.
Yeah.
James Harden is overachieving based on my very low expectations, and I wanted to recognize that.
Fair enough. 2-2 in that series. That and I'm not totally sure either of them are beating whichever team comes out of the other series, because the other team, the team that comes out of the other series is a gajillion times more mentally prepared for those things than either of these teams.
It's going to be a very strange conference finals. Yeah, because you don't come away, and now obviously these are 2 of the top 3 teams record wise. You don't come away from this series feeling good about either of them, though.
No, not at all. Not at all. So it'll be very interesting, because whoever, the Heat or the Knicks, whichever one of them, both of those teams will hit the other team in the mouth. The Knicks are not afraid of the Celtics, not even kind of. And Jimmy Butler's not afraid of anybody.
No.
And the Knicks have apparently Mitchell Robinson, if you're looking for a guy to guard Joel Embiid, Mitchell Robinson is probably pretty high up there on the making. I mean, he made Evan Mobley and Jared Allen look silly at the end of that first round series. So Embiid also not exactly a mental fortress. So if he's getting just kind of rinsed in the physicality department, then I could also see that being an issue as well. Anyways, interesting playoffs for sure. And we're not done. I mean, we had the newest owner of the NBA getting an altercation with another NBA player last night.
Not just any NBA player.
Yeah, an NBA player that had 53 and 11 in the game. 53 and 11, Josh.
Yeah.
53 and 11. Yeah, him and Murray having a combined 82, 81. Now, on the other side of things, Durant and Booker had 72, and they had like 84 the day before, and they needed all of them. It's just wild playoffs. Anyways, in college basketball, it was an eventful week, Josh. An eventful week headlined by two highly anticipated decisions. One of them being the highest ranked transfer left, well, in the transfer portal period. So by default, if he hadn't transferred to a school yet, he was the highest rated transfer to not make a decision. And Hunter Dickinson is going to play college basketball in the Big 12 next year. But before we get to that, Josh, it feels like, and so I am in my alter ego as the producer of a golf podcast for CBS Sports. Every week I'm in a meeting with the producer of the Eye on College Basketball podcast. And every week when they ask, his name is Nada, shouts to Nada. Every week they ask him, do you have an idea when Bronny is going to commit to a college? The last 3 weeks it should be any day. And that's kind of how it's felt with this Bronny James thing for long, because the guy is supposed to play college basketball in the fall, and it's May 8th, and it's only been a couple days since Bronny decided where he's going to play college basketball. Of course, I love how we have to write that, because there will be some very casual fans wondering why a 4-star guard committing to USC is a big deal. But the oldest son of Lakers legend LeBron is that disrespectful to call him a Lakers legend? Like, disrespectful to Cleveland and disrespectful to what he's done in Miami and
to the Lakers,
and perhaps to the Lakers.
Just everybody. Yeah.
I mean, now, like, by definition, he's the best basketball player to ever wear a Lakers jersey, but he's not the best Laker ever.
No. Now, I think you could also interpret that as just simply he plays for the Lakers.
Right.
You can't call him right. You're not going to call him a Cavaliers legend at this point, because obviously he's still playing and he's playing. It's weird, but You're absolutely right. Yes, but this is very much a.
But you could use something like all-time leading NBA's all-time leading scorer.
Right. There's a way. LeBron has done enough things that you could find a different way to describe him. Yes,
that just seems to be low on his list of accomplishments that he's worn a Lakers jersey,
and the Lakers should feel the same way about that.
Right. Number 26 player in the class of 247 Sports, according to 247 Sports. There you go. Department of Redundancy department here on this Monday morning. He joins a class at USC that is top 30 in the country for 2023, joining the number 1 overall player in the class of 2023, Isaiah Collier, a point guard out of Georgia. And then Arrington Page, who is a 6'9" center. Interesting. That has very I guess Okongwu is a little taller than that, but Okongwu was kind of like that. I think he's only like 6'10", right? When he was at USC. Oh
yeah, that sounds right.
Maybe. I'm going to go back and look. I don't remember what class he was in specifically, but I'm going to find it. But slightly undersized center. I'm not going to lie and tell you that I know a ton about him right now. But joins a class that has 2 other top 50 guys and the number 1 ranked recruit at 247 Sports in the class of 2023. Josh, how do you feel about this? How am I supposed to feel about this? Because this is, as I said, if you took the name off of this recruit, this is a guy who is a top 30 recruit in a class and is probably going to make a college basketball team better, but it's the name that makes this a really big deal rather than the fact that USC and maybe Bronny James is the Pac-12 player of the year and like a first team All-American. Sure, that could happen. And college basketball, if there's a chance that he could be a first team All-American at the end of the year, Bronny James is probably going to be a first team All-American. But if we took those things away, top 30 recruit, really solid get for Andy Enfield, but it's not like this is a program that never gets any top recruits. I mean, they've got the number one player in the class in 2023. So how do you feel about this? How are you kind of approaching what this means for college basketball, for USC next year, wherever you want to take it? Because the scale doesn't necessarily balance out between the actual impact on the Pac-12 and USC and the warranted coverage that this gets because who Bronny James is.
Yeah. I'm very interested in this from a USC perspective and the attention that this puts on USC. Because like you said, the idea of what does Bronny James mean for this college basketball season, he's going to have to be something that at this point nobody is expecting him to be, for him to have a major impact on this, the story of this upcoming season. However, now people are obviously going to be paying attention to this USC team. That's the part of this that I'm excited about, is that this USC team is very interesting in a Pac-12 that has nobody that scares you at this moment in time. Now, generally the Pac-12 doesn't have many teams that scare you, but there's not even a UCLA last year where you went, look, they have, core pieces from a Final Four team. You got two really good players, one of the best defenders in the country, reliable point guard, All-American kind of candidates, Pac-12 Player of the Year guys, some big-time recruits coming. Right. It was clear that the UCLA team was going to be top 15 in the country, Final Four candidate. Not all of those pieces, but most of those pieces are now gone. Arizona's having to retool. This is the best team in the Pac-12 on paper. So to me, and we'll get into this a little bit, there are some very interesting conversations about this from a legacy perspective for Andy Enfield and dealing with these kind of expectations that probably are going to get even exaggerated more than they should be now because of Bronny James' existence, even though my anticipation for this team doesn't even have to do that much with him. It's about the entire roster and where they fit in the Pac-12.
Yeah, the thing that's super interesting here is Bronny will be serviced the best by playing on a really good college basketball team. Mm-hmm. Bronny is not going to, at least, I would not predict Bronny to be the reason that a college basketball team is really good, like on his own, right?
And it's not his game,
right? So that's my point. He's not a really awesome half-court creator that's going to turn the other four guys on the floor into something better than they actually are. He's not a guy that's going to average 24 in college basketball next year. What he does do is he's unselfish. He's clearly he's one of those he's one of those rare athletes where all of the attention they get kind of shows me something about who they are as just somebody who can handle the lights. And I would never, LaMelo Ball coming out of Australia, I would have never been like, man, he's proven that he can handle the lights. And not that it was the opposite necessarily, but Bronny, every indication is that he's handled the magnifying glass that comes with being LeBron James's oldest son and the first one to enter the college basketball landscape and being the kid that LeBron says, I want to play with my son on an NBA court at some point. He's handled it all just about as well as you can. And I think that kind of plays into the type of basketball player that he is. He's unselfish. He's a capable defender and can get downhill, is kind of scary in transition, as is custom to the guy with James on the back of his jersey. But those things, and he's good as a catch and shoot catch and shoot 3-point shooter. All of those things lend themselves to making a good college basketball team even better, rather than being the reason that an otherwise okay college basketball team is suddenly really good, in the same way that, like Trae Young turned that Oklahoma team from a like fine college basketball team into a really, really special college basketball team. Bronny's not that type of player. And so, to your point, I think it's much more advantageous for him if USC is really good next year, and the guys that he's playing with are really good, whether it's the guys coming to USC with him or the guys that are already there. The better that team is, I think the better position Bronny will be put in, because the things that he does well typically lend themselves to elevating an already good team rather than pulling a mediocre one out of mediocrity.
Yep. Yeah. And there are going to be the people that are saying, why isn't he scoring more? And we're not going to get into that conversation because we know the answer to that question. But from a Pac-12 standpoint, I really do like this in terms of having this team and some excitement around somebody not named UCLA. Both he and Isaiah Collier can play next to Boogie Ellis, and the fit seems really good.
Yeah.
Right? Because neither of them are these ball-dominant 30-point-a-game guys, like you said. Boogie Ellis is a proven scorer above everything else at the college level. So now you put these other guys who have, court vision, passing ability, going to move the ball next to him. And, I mean, maybe all three of them start. It'll be interesting to see how Andy Enfield handles all of this. I would have to assume Collier is going to start.
Yeah.
I would assume Bronny is not, because he's not one of the best 5 players on this team and not the best player at his position.
At least before getting on campus.
Yes.
Because let's not be silly. If it's debatable who the best player at the 2-guard position is, Bronny is going to start.
Yeah.
That's just good business. It just is.
And you can start all, you can start all 3 of them. Because
if you want to, yeah, sure.
And that's the other nice part, is that he and Collier are both relatively big for college guards.
Yeah.
Right? These aren't 5'11" guys. They're 6'3".
Yeah.
And then you pair that backcourt trio with Vince Iwuchukwu and Joshua Morgan on the interior. You've got rim protection. You've got a force to be reckoned with in Iwuchukwu, who obviously, kind of got going at the end of last season, but didn't get the full lead up and a full college season. So it's going to be good to see him theoretically get a full season under his belt. And maybe he's one of those guys that you could see as a breakout star, just because he didn't have a full year to get ready. He was obviously dealing with all of the medical concerns, and that needs to be taken care of first. So assuming he's healthy and ready to go, I mean, like I said before, to me, this is clearly the best team in the Pac-12. That's not something we've talked about Andy Enfield's teams coming into a season very much. And so from him too, how do you deal with everything that's going to come with this, and the fact that, at least as of now, Bronny is not the centerpiece of your team. He's not even the centerpiece of your recruiting class.
Which is a good place to be, because Bronny is a good basketball player.
Exactly. Right. That's a commentary on the talent that this USC team has, not a knock on Bronny. Yeah. And how do you deal with the pressure of, outside of the media circus, just the fact this team should be awfully good.
Yeah.
It should be one of the best 10 to 15 teams in the country. There's a lot going on here that I'm very excited to see how this all plays out. I like the way that this developed.
And at the same time, there's this kind of underlying current of how good of a college basketball coach relative to expectations is Andy Enfield.
Right.
But
he's always been kind of an enigma.
But then also at the same time, the last time he had a team that was talented enough to go to the Final Four, he ran into Zion. He ran into, which Duke team did they run into in the Elite Eight?
Didn't they?
Or was it the Sweet 16? Oh no, you're right. It was Gonzaga. Sorry. Yes,
they wiped the floor with that bad Kansas team.
Yeah,
relatively speaking.
Right. And then but there was some like Evan Mobley, USC. Yeah, that's who it was. Sorry. It was some historically good college basketball team. I had Zion Williamson Duke in my head, but that wasn't that would have been too long ago for Evan Mobley. So I think you're right. I think it was the 21 tournament where Gonzaga just kind of made quick work of them, but there was some anticipation heading into that. I think it was an Elite Eight matchup.
Yes, I'm confirming that. That's my memory, is that it was the Elite Eight, because they beat Kansas they rolled Kansas in the Sweet 16, I think.
Yeah,
I'm checking. Stand by.
I'm looking right now. They beat Kansas they beat Kansas, and then they beat Oregon, and then they lost 85-66.
Oh, right. Gonzaga. Kansas was second round. Yeah.
Yeah. Because Kansas was a 6 seed or 6 seed that year, or a 3 seed.
Kansas I think it was a 3-6 matchup.
It was a 3-6 matchup. Yeah. USC was a 6. So 3-6. Anyways, all of that to say, just that's a good word for Andy Enfield. He's kind of an enigma. You're not totally sure what to think. And he's also just one of those guys that doesn't have a recruiting class like this all the time.
They've always had talent, though.
But not from you just said that we've never talked about USC having the best team in the Pac-12. You just said that.
Right. Well, there's a difference between not being able to recruit while not having the best team. Right.
Sure, but this is a different, like, he's only had one high level recruit. Not all that often does he have. Say that again?
Mobley, Iwuchukwu.
Yeah, I'm just saying per team. That's not the same team.
Oh. I see what you're saying. Yes, right. He hasn't been able to put multiple. Yes. Yeah. I see what you're saying.
And the expectation is not usually. That Mobley team was not supposed to be elite.
No, right. Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't, but.
Yeah. I feel like you can kind of talk yourself into, they could be pretty good, and then they don't really reach that potential. But then come tournament time, sometimes, you like that in that Mobley team in particular, it was, look at what, USC kind of has this thing figured out. I bet Mobley might be the best player in the country. That it's never just kind of cut and dry if they're disappointing or they overachieve. Sure. They just kind of continue to evolve over the season. And even last year's team had a little bit of that. They should have been better than they were. And obviously the Iwuchukwu medical scare had something to do with that. But yeah, it's just kind of strange. I never feel like you actually know what you're going to get, because when you talk yourself into they've been disappointing and maybe they're not as good as they should be, they kind of prove you wrong while also not totally. This is just a different starting point. I would argue they've generally been slightly disappointing, but this is what the recruiting part of this gets you, right? Is his job is not in danger because he keeps putting talented teams on the floor and they at least come close to delivering to expectations. So now that you've got this combination of returning players and this recruiting class, right, this is a different world we're living in now.
It's also helpful that while finishing top 3 in a conference in any Power 5 conference is probably a good season, but also simultaneously finishing 3rd in the Pac-12 a lot of seasons recently is not that impressive.
Right.
But he keeps doing it, and he keeps recruiting better than whoever the next guy to recruit, probably, right? So it's kind of like Enfield's probably not perfect, but he's probably better than whatever else we would get, at least immediately.
Right. Because they're the 3rd best program at this point in the Pac-12 behind UCLA and Arizona?
Yeah.
Just from a year-to-year standpoint.
Oregon's. I mean, right this second, I would think USC is in a better place than Oregon. I mean, Oregon hasn't been good since that Dylan Brooks Dorsey team that went to the Final Four.
Peyton Pritchard had a pretty good team.
The Pritchard team. Sorry, the Pritchard teams were good. I've misremembered about Pritchard. Yes, that is true. But the last couple of years have not been pretty.
Right. That's the thing Enfield has avoided, right? He hasn't had that catastrophic season. Right. They've just been in the ballpark of what you expect, right? 3rd best team in the Pac-12, get some good wins. Sometimes they have an NCAA tournament run. Now the question is, can you do more than that with this roster, the returners, another big-time recruit in Collier, and the spotlight very much on you this season?
Over under 2.5 years Bronny James spends in college.
Under.
Over under a year and a half Bronny James spends in college.
It's
tough, right?
Very tough. Under.
You think it's 1?
Yeah, and my other thought process was, I feel like LeBron has, for very understandable reasons, convinced himself he's got 2 really good years left. Right, so that it doesn't have to be next season.
Sure.
That
what
he can wait out Bronny for a couple years. The reason I went under was somebody's going to sign him because that probably means you're getting LeBron. Or the Lakers are going to do it right. It's not as much about Bronny's going to be a polished player that execs are going to want to draft based on his evaluation coming out of this season as, well, if we take him, if he does well enough, LeBron is making, I think LeBron just said something again, that this is what he wants to do, right? He's been very open about that. So you know that there's this added benefit that comes with Bronny. So I feel like Bronny's going to be able to get there because of who he is. And if he just shows enough, somebody's going to give him a chance.
I'm not totally sure how I feel about this. Because LeBron James, 39-year-old LeBron James, like, I don't really care if I get 39-year-old LeBron James or not. I don't especially care. I'm certainly not wasting a first-round pick on his son if he's not a first-round pick otherwise, because I get 39 post-plantar fasciitis LeBron James. But at the same time, I also see how a team would talk themselves into that, and
right.
maybe
it depends on the situation, right?
I mean, I guess
if you're the Sacramento...
but it's also not like any, like, LeBron's gonna want $40 million a year. There's not a good team in the NBA that, like, really has room for LeBron. That's already good.
I mean, maybe the Kings.
I mean, I guess. I also, like, don't want LeBron on the Kings.
Right. That's the difficult part of this is, right, what is the perfect fit where this all works?
Right. Because if LeBron's fine with going and sucking for the last 2 years, then it's easy. Somebody takes Bronny, like, in the top 5 of the second round,
exactly.
and then they say, hey, LeBron, come on down to Charlotte.
Right.
And then he and Bronny play for Charlotte for a couple of years, and then he retires.
Right.
But there's probably not a world in which LeBron can put himself in a situation where he is on a team with his son that actually has a real chance of winning a title. That's probably not going to happen.
Right. Because that, to your point, and I'm with you on that, the question is, do you want to trade what you have for LeBron at this point in his career?
Right.
Right. Because there's the other teams that, do you want LeBron? I don't care what age LeBron is. I want LeBron.
Sure.
Does LeBron want to go to the teams that want? Right. Exactly. There's a lot of things that have to fit, and there's no obvious, okay, this team is ready to win now, has the money to do this, and is willing to fit the pieces together to actually make it happen. Yeah.
So here's what I would tell LeBron to do. Are you ready for this? Here's what I would tell LeBron to do. LeBron has a player option for 24-25. Okay. He's making $47 million next year, 23-24. And he is making $50.6 million in 24-25.
If he opts in?
If he opts in, it's a player option. But, like, he's probably going to opt into the $50 million contract. But then again, he could probably sign a 1-year, $50 million contract elsewhere. So maybe not. I would tell LeBron to get surgery in the offseason and take next year off on his plantar fasciitis. You know, that injury that takes 6 to 8 months for everybody else to come back from. But he was like, I'm going to put off surgery and play in the playoffs. It's kind of ridiculous. It's kind of crazy. It's like whatever they gave Patrick Mahomes for his high ankle sprain before the Super Bowl. He got on the phone with Patty Mahomes and said, okay, where'd you get it? I need it. Because there's part of me, and then you see, I was like, you know what? He should just take next year off, come back completely healthy, cruise through 24, 25, let his kid play a second year of college, and then sign wherever his kid gets drafted in the 25 NBA draft. But then it had his age next to him, and in 25, he's going to be 41 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, he doesn't exactly look like Vince Carter did at 40, but at some point, right? Like at some point.
Yeah, there's kind of two conversations about how long can he keep doing this, which I would argue to our conversation about Steph last week. It doesn't look like he's at the end of the road.
Well, I mean, if you put him on a team that he doesn't have to try in the regular season, or, you know, quote unquote try.
Right.
And that was the only like, maybe Russell Westbrook makes a little bit of sense because LeBron can just cruise while Russell Westbrook, and it just didn't work out that way. But I mean, if you can find him a team that can get a 6 seed, because that's the other part with the other issue with the Lakers is the Lakers aren't good enough without LeBron to get a 6 seed. They're just not.
Right.
And like they needed a playing game this year, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, and LeBron, when he was on the court, was really, really good in the regular season. And they still needed a playing game. So if you can find him a team that doesn't need him, that he can play 55 games and at 24 minutes a game, and then he's ready to go for the playoffs, and you can still get a 4, 5, 6 seed, then yeah, sure, I'm game for several more years. But if you're in a place where he has to put a lot of effort into the regular season, then that's where it gets dicey.
Right. And he can't be the best player on your team come the playoffs.
Oh, not anymore. No, not
that's
anymore.
What's changed. He can still be a huge, he can still give you 35-point performances. He can obviously still be sensational.
Which is why the Lakers are so up and down in these playoffs. Because did you see the AD stats? It goes like 30, 16, 30, 14, 30, 12. Yeah.
That's exactly where I was going.
Yeah.
You just need to look at Anthony Davis' stats to figure out if the Warriors are winning, if the Lakers are winning or losing these games against the Warriors. Yeah. It's just not complicated. Same thing with the bubble. He was phenomenal, right? You need that kind. There are a lot of moving pieces here. I'm just going to lean on LeBron has a plan. Obviously, when he signed this I remember now when he signed this contract, the whole thing was, oh, look, he's got this player option lined up with Bronny. So that, he is a free agent when Bronny will be eligible to enter the NBA draft. If I have to guess right now, I'm still saying that's what ends up happening. What that actually means and what it looks like, I got no clue.
I think Bronny will play 1 year in college. That's what I think. And I think he will get drafted because his last name is James.
And because you could still get LeBron with him. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not the Kawhi Paul George thing, but it's in the same category as the Kawhi Paul George thing.
Yeah.
Yes, we have to pick Bronny with our 37th pick, which we wouldn't do otherwise, but we also get LeBron James with the 37th pick. And that's probably worth it, and you're probably not. I mean, most 37th overall picks aren't any good anyways.
Right. And Bronny's game, I'll be interested to watch him at the college level, because I would argue his game actually lends itself to the NBA really well.
Sure.
Right. Not as being
in
a
theory,
star,
but as a point guard, as like a glue point guard guy. Sure.
Exactly. Right. A defensive guy gives you a little bit of not as much size at the NBA level, but still decent size for his position. Right. There are a lot of things.
If he can turn himself into a playmaker in the half court this year in college, then he can because he's absolutely big enough to be he's a good sized NBA point guard.
Right. Yeah.
He's kind of in that Steph Curry, like he probably can't be a shooting guard, but if he can turn himself into a point guard, all of a sudden he has good size for a point guard.
Right. That there are a lot of things that he does, right? People are going to expect him to be LeBron and he's just not. But there are a lot of things he does well that lend itself to winning basketball, kind of where we started this conversation. That can help an NBA team theoretically, and obviously he's got the athletic genes and all that kind of stuff if he can put it all together. So to me, there's that added benefit too of, maybe you're looking at him and he's not the 37th best prospect in this draft, but I could talk myself into this idea of, he might actually be able to make it. With the people are going to want to give him a chance because he's LeBron's kid, but also he's got some tools in his toolbox that are going to play winning basketball. He's my type of player.
I would agree. The only thing that doesn't lend itself to that is the fact that he's not going to have the ball in his hands a ton in the half court at USC. So I think it'll be a little bit difficult for him to show that a lot, even if he is capable of it. Because right now that's the biggest like on ball creativity and playmaking for other guys. If you're going to be an NBA point guard, that's something you got to be able to do, even if it's just in the pick and roll. You've got to be able to do it. Bronny James is a Trojan. I think if you told me 2 years ago that Bronny James wasn't going to play college basketball at Duke, I wouldn't have believed you. But here we are playing at USC, and USC would certainly be high on that list with its location relative to where LeBron James currently plays basketball. Hunter Dickinson, the top-rated transfer in this year's portal.
I love how teams are doing that now.
Is on his way. Did you see the video that he made?
Oh, yeah. Oh, we need to talk about the video.
Bad. It was so bad. Picking between the likes of Kansas, Kentucky, Villanova, near where he played high school basketball at DeMatha in the DMV area, Maryland and Georgetown also on the list of his programs. But Hunter Dickinson is going to go play college basketball in Lawrence at Fog Allen for Bill Self, and Kansas launching themselves into the very upper echelon of college basketball next season, securing Hunter Dickinson next year. What say you? What say you?
His numbers are going to be stupid.
Is he the best? Is he the best big to ever wear a Kansas uniform?
I'm not going that far yet.
So who are the other candidates?
How far back are we going?
I don't care.
Because, there's Chamberlain.
You've got some so let's go in the Bill Self
era. Okay.
Yeah. Because I wasn't really thinking it.
I didn't think you were. That's why I asked. Yeah.
But we're talking Nick Collison. We're talking
Cole Aldrich.
We're talking Cole Aldrich. We're talking Udoka Azubuike. We're talking. I feel like I'm missing one.
Thomas Robinson.
Sure. Good shout. It's a good shout there. We're talking.
Perry Ellis.
Stop it. Do you know Perry Ellis is still playing college basketball? Those are probably the candidates, right? How long has Bill Self been the coach? 04? Look at that. 04.
Nice.
Way to go, kid. Let's see. Yeah, nothing exactly catching my eye there in his inaugural season. Yeah, I'm bored by that roster. Okay. Brandon Rush, Mario Chalmers. What a shout. No, not the point for this conversation, but those are good basketball players.
Yeah.
Sharon Collins. Oh my gosh. Brandon Rush, Sharon Collins, Mario Chalmers, all on the same basketball team. I'm in. In a related issue, they won the national championship that year. That was a lie. They won the national championship the next year with Sharon Collins, Brandon Rush, and Mario Chalmers. Yeah, Cole Aldrich. Yeah, he might be.
In terms of a single season most talented offensive player.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will kind of operate under the assumption that is what we will be saying at the end of the season.
Yeah.
That's as far as I'm willing to go now. But you think as
Brady Morningstar. Hell yeah. Morningstar. Gosh, that's so good. That's so good. Anyway, sorry, continue.
You think of most of these guys, not necessarily as much Aldridge, but they're all defensive guys first.
Mm-hmm.
Who kind of turned into, obviously serviceable weapons offensively.
Mm-hmm.
But he's on a whole different level.
Oh, right. Do you know that Joel Embiid was a Kansas Jayhawk?
That's right. Yeah, see, I just don't even...
Oh,
yeah.
right.
He had that, yeah, you just... Yeah. So yes, in terms of college production and the stats, he's got the opportunity to blow them all out of the water for a single season, 100%.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. He's at least the best combination of. It's a good point. He's got a different bag than most Kansas bigs have. But perhaps the most important part is that all of Kansas's best teams, all of them, have a traditional big at the center of it.
Yes.
And this is a traditional big that will put more pressure on an offense, or excuse me, on a defense than any other traditional big that Bill Self has had in his time as the Kansas head coach. And when you add him to what that team already has and a point guard like DeJuan Harris, then it starts to come into focus pretty quickly.
Now, here's the interesting part about this team. We'll get into this more with preseason predictions and previews and stuff. Who's the other guy? Right? It was always you have the guard and the big. Is DeJuan Harris that guy? Is DeJuan Harris going to start scoring 14, 15 points a game?
I'll pass on that one, Chief.
Because I am interested in that part of this. Your second leading returning scorer is KJ Adams.
Mm-hmm.
Also, how does this work with those two guys in the front court together, neither of whom can really stretch the floor? Size-wise, I mean, Adams was he's 6'7".
Mm-hmm.
Right? They were playing incredibly small last season. But then you're looking at this. I mean, DeJuan Harris averaged 9 points.
So the answer to the question is that somebody coming from high school or also coming from the transfer portal is more than likely going to be the answer. Right. It's either going to be Elmarco Jackson, the top 20 point guard 5-star coming into the fold, Chris Johnson, another top 50 guy from Montverde in
Arterio
Florida. And then right, the other kind of, you've got two other top 110 recruits, but I'm guessing that Jamari McDowell is not going to be the guy. But the other shout is Arterio Morris coming from Texas, and sure, let's throw Nick Timberlake in there too. But
that's not what Nick Timberlake does, right? No. Nick Timberlake is going to be a very important part of this team. He's just not point guard facilitator guy.
No, but you didn't say point guard facilitator guy. You said that's not always what it is,
right? Because
that's an incorrect thing to say,
right? Jalen Wilson has kind of.
It hasn't been point guard since Devontae Graham.
Oh, right, because that right. The Abaji.
I mean, it was perimeter galore and David McCormick. That's what that team was.
Abaji and Wilson have kind of turned this on its head by being the best two players on the last two Kansas teams. Right. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. You're right though, that somebody on the perimeter. And I would like for it to be a perimeter guy so that DeJuan Harris can just kind of keep being the guy that he is.
Right. And again, we did this last season, and then Jalen Wilson did Jalen Wilson things, and all of a sudden it was very clear this wasn't an issue. Mm-hmm. However, the difference with this team is that player is not currently on the roster. I do feel pretty confident about that, unless it's DeJuan Harris. Like you said,
what, right? that next best player on the team that can win a title, or that next best perimeter player on the team that is winning a title is not on the team right now?
No, that if somebody is going to be kind of continue the Abaji Wilson legacy, whether that's a point guard, whether that's a wing, that player was not on last year's roster.
Okay. Yes.
I misspoke, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. It was okay. Can Jalen Wilson do this? But also, you knew it wasn't surprising that Jalen Wilson became what he did, right? Became what he was. Because we had seen Jalen Wilson play really well for Kansas. Jalen Wilson had spent multiple seasons in that program. That is the one hesitation I have with this team and automatically making them number one is you're still relying an awful lot on a lot of pieces that haven't done this in a Jayhawk uniform, which generally hasn't been a problem. And yes, you do have returning pieces. But there's nobody you're looking at going, that's the next guy. Can he do it? We got that wrong with Wilson last season. And I'm going to give Bill Self the benefit of the doubt, at least to a certain extent, because he's obviously done this multiple times now. But that's the one other thing I was thinking about is, okay, right. You've got your foundational piece at the center position the way that Bill Self wants this. Who is the All-American caliber on the perimeter? The All-American caliber player.
And the other part of it is that when was the last time Kansas's best player was a transfer? Was a guy that didn't wear Kansas jersey the year before? Because that's what we're looking at this year.
Yes. Oh, 100%.
Unless it's DeJuan Harris, and if it's DeJuan Harris, then things have either gone really right or really wrong.
Right.
You know what I mean?
They're not just good.
They're either going to be absolutely elite or bad.
Right.
If DeJuan Harris is the best player on the team next year, but 2 years ago it was Agbaji, the 21 team. I mean, we could go back for maybe ever.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I mean, Marcus Garrett probably gets the nod, at least the most impactful, but Agbaji was probably the most talented 3 years ago as well. That 20 team was Devon Dotson. That was a guy that had been there the year before. Udoka Azubuike, of course, as well. That team that was probably the best team in the country in the tournament we didn't get to see. Then you go back, you're looking at, Devon Dotson again, Dedrick Lawson, Marcus Garrett, all of guys that have been there before. Well, is that true? Was that Dedrick's only year at Kansas?
Maybe.
It was. So there you go. That might be the answer. Dedrick Lawson on that 2019 team that wasn't very good.
I was going to say that team listed.
I might have just walked into the point I was trying to make. I mean, that team went 26-10, was 17th at KenPom. Man, I'm so tired of Kansas. I just said that team that wasn't very good.
Right.
26-10 and top 20 at KenPom.
I was about to say, how did that? Yeah, I didn't because. Yeah,
they lost to Auburn. They lost to an Auburn team that went to the Final Four in the second round.
Right, that was the 4-5 game. Yep. Okay. Yeah. So, right, a national title caliber team, the Kansas you have come to expect, has never been built around a transfer like this. Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting.
Now, also the transfer that's coming in is not Dedrick Lawson. Right.
It's true. Dedrick Lawson finished 8th in KenPom Player of the Year that year.
Did he really?
He did.
Good for him. I don't change my stance on that statement. Good for him, though.
Yeah, fair enough. Over under 7.5 at KenPom Player of the Year, Hunter Dickinson next year.
Over.
Right? He's got to be like top 3, right? 2.5 is probably the better over under.
I would be stunned if he's not a first team All-American. Stunned.
What do we think? Are we thinking like 20 and 11?
Yeah.
It's got to be something like that, right?
Yeah.
He was not in the top 10 this year, by the way, which is not super surprising, but also, let's see, is there player of the game rankings? Is that a thing? Is there player of the game rankings? I don't think so.
I think there are somewhere in there.
Yeah, somewhere is the operative word there.
The point being, he's going to get a lot more attention this season.
Agreed.
I'm just sad he's not in the Big East.
Darius McGee was top 10 in KenPom Player of the Year standings last year.
That doesn't shock me.
I'm in. But yes, he's going to be on a lot of radars early, and certainly will not have to do anything to get on radars. He will be right there as a first team All-American preseason. Might even be the preseason National Player of the Year.
I mean, if they're going to be the best,
is it too early to be having that conversation? Is it too early to be having that conversation? Who's on the short list? I suppose we're still waiting on Zach Edey, right? There's no
Edey? I guess that's a fair point.
So if Edey comes back, it's going to be Edey.
He's there or not. Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I guess we can't really have that until the NBA draft decisions are made, right?
Yeah, you're probably right.
But if Edey's
come back to college basketball, please.
If Edey's gone, yeah, I mean, because you're talking about,
right? Trey Jackson Davis, like the other guys high on the list, right here. The top. I mean, maybe Jalen Pickett. Is he gone? Yes. Is he done?
Yes.
Okay. So the top 8. Is Tabellus back next year? He was a junior last year.
I think he declared for the draft, didn't he?
So, with that being said, the top 9 of the KenPom Player of the Year standings: Zach Edey, Jaime Jaquez, Trace Jackson Davis, Brandon Miller, Drew Timme, Jalen Wilson, Adama Sanogo, Jalen Pickett, Azelis Tubelis. Oh, hey, the game MVP leaders were right there in front of my face.
Oh, there
Here we
you
go. Here you go. Zach Edey won, sure.
Yep.
Darius McGee and Trace Jackson Davis second.
Okay.
Little fourth place, Drew Pember. I'm in.
Nice.
UNC
nice.
Asheville. Tavion Kinsey, Marshall. I'm in. Also tied with Jaime Jaquez, Tubelis, and Brandon Miller. And then 9 was Asmus. Shouts to Texas. Asmus might be a first-team All-American next year.
Yeah. And Tubelis did declare for the draft, and it sounds like he's staying in.
Is
I was operating under the
Is Asmus a preseason first-team All-American next year?
Asmus?
Yeah.
Probably.
He tied with Adama Sanogo and Brandon Podziemski from Santa Clara for 15 game MVPs last year. I mean, who in the country is getting more attention preseason than Max Asmus at Texas? Don't mess with Texas.
Yeah. Is Tyler Kolek? I mean,
shoot, that's a good one.
I'm just trying to think of the
DeJuan Harris.
Right, the top players on the top, the preseason top teams. Okay, so maybe somebody from Duke. Oh,
the Kentucky guys. Filipowski. That's a good shot. Oh my gosh, it's going to be hard to be a first-team All-American big next year, especially if Edey comes back. Jeez, I mean, especially those are the 3, right? That's like the upper echelon: Filipowski, Dickinson, and Edey.
Yeah. Right, because you're talking. It seems like the teams that, at least as of now, you're talking Kansas, you're talking Duke, you're talking UConn. Although, I don't know who. We got to see what the NBA draft decisions there and how that all kind of plays out in terms of All-Americans.
Trivia time: who is the highest ranked recruit? Who is the only 1.000 recruit in Duke history?
Jabari Parker.
That's incorrect. You know who's third? Josh McRoberts. That's laugh out loud funny. But who's first? There's only been one with a 1.00 ranking.
Is this a recent player?
Yes. Lively and Dariq Whitehead are 4 and 5, by the way. Just for fun. Paolo was 8.
Barrett?
That's correct. RJ Barrett is the all-time the number 1 recruit in Duke history at 247 at least.
Yeah, because you're talking about those teams. Okay, I mean, you're not picking somebody from Michigan State, even though they've got a really good roster on paper.
Mm-hmm. Kentucky has 5 5-stars. They have a 5.
Right, who are you picking from
They have a
Kentucky?
5-person recruiting class, and all 5 of them are 5 stars.
Yeah, right. Kentucky's going to be good, but which one of those one players are you saying that's the? Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Will you explain to me why a guy like Reed Shepherd, who is the 40th ranked player in this class and going to Kentucky, why are you I'm not choosing Kentucky. If Justin Edwards, Aaron Bradshaw, DJ Wagner, and Robert Dillingham are also choosing Kentucky, I mean, I suppose there's a bet on yourself thing there, and he's from Kentucky, so maybe that's part of it. But that dude's not going to play. At best, you're like a Tyler Hero, but you only get to play 16 minutes a game.
Mm-hmm.
At best. Anyways, if my goal was to get to the NBA, that wouldn't be my decision.
And I would almost flip that. I mean, I would probably agree with you. I would also say that there are, I don't know if I'm one of these people. There are people, plenty of them, right, who believe that John Calipari is the best in the country at preparing you for NBA success.
Sure, but if you don't get to play, it doesn't matter.
And that there's value in the reputation of being at Kentucky, even if you don't have a big role.
Sure, but if you're at a really prestigious high school, but you fail all your classes, it doesn't matter that you went to the high school.
Sure, I'm not saying I agree with it. You asked why, and I'm saying that might be why. And also, right, I mean, if you're from Kentucky, that's you either want to go there or Louisville, right? Probably.
Right. Louisville also a top 5 recruiting class in
Yes.
2023.
And just got themselves a nice transfer. Speaking of USC,
Yeah.
Trey White, official.
Yep. Saw that. Yeah. That's fine. It just like that guy is never like there are going to be 4 guys next year that are higher on the totem pole than him if he comes back. Like they will find 4 recruits that are more highly anticipated than the return of Reed Shepard. That's just the point. I stopped playing high school soccer because it became very clear that all the guys coming from middle school, when I was already in high school, they were all already better than I was. So I was never going to get to play. Granted, I wasn't the number 40 recruit in the class of 2016 soccer.
Granted. Middle school rankings.
Yeah, you know, that's what it is. Me and the really huge football player that was going to Wofford to play college football, he and I had a blast on the bench that year. I had freshmen turning heads when I was saying what's up to the senior middle linebacker, little chunky Josh, like 5'5" at the time. I'm not that much taller now, but I was taller than 5'5". I'm taller than 5'5" now, but me and my boy Dylan, we were boys by the end, and it was the most laugh out loud friendship in our high school that year. 100%. Anywho, shouts to Reed Shepard. I hope he has a great time at Kansas. Kentucky. Man, he might fight me for making that mistake. I hope you like crack into the starting lineup and you play 24 minutes a game.
If he starts going, we might have to do a Reed Shepard report.
I might have to apologize publicly to Reed Shepard. That's correct. All right, you got anything else on Hunter Dickinson? Now that we've strayed all the way to our Kansas recruiting class, Kentucky. Yes. Dang it!
We'll have more time to kind of dive into the nuts and bolts of this roster. Mm-hmm. I have questions still. That's all I'll say.
Of the Kansas roster?
Yeah.
That's fair.
Not necessarily doubts, just questions.
My biggest beef, and we can end on this. Do you know? So it would be fair to say that Hunter Dickinson has been the most important player on Kansas's team the last 2 seasons.
Michigan.
Right? Because Michigan. Jesus. Yes. Michigan.
Yes.
Last 2 seasons. His freshman year, there was Franz Wagner's all over the places. There was Isaiah Livers all over the places. There were guys.
He might have been. But yes, I agree with your general assessment. That one is
He did lead the team in scoring that year, but I think that even Hunter Dickinson will tell you that was not his basketball team.
Yes.
This is the point I'm getting to. Do you know Michigan's record the last 2 seasons combined?
I would say between 4 and 8 games over 500.
You would be correct. 37 and 31 in the last 2 years. Hunter Dickinson has been very good.
Yep.
And he's been given very high-rated recruits both years. Now, granted, those guys not being great is not necessarily his fault. Not his fault. Not necessarily. That's not his fault. All I'm saying is that there's a ton of brouhaha over this guy who played on 2 mediocre basketball teams as the best team on that team. Mm-hmm. That's all I'm saying. And there are extenuating circumstances that don't necessarily have to do with him. All I'm saying is that sometimes if you're expecting Hunter Dickinson to come in and he's probably not, but if Hunter Dickinson needs to be the center of your winning culture, I'm not a huge fan of that. So as long as somebody else is doing it, if it's DeJuan Harris that kind of feels like the heartbeat of this basketball team.
KJ Adams is a high
KJ Adams, guy. Yeah. Whoever it is, I just I don't think it can be Hunter Dickinson. It's a little bit like the Kawhi Leonard is a culture enhancer, not a culture creator.
Mm-hmm.
Because in San Antonio, he was part of this Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili pop cog. And he came into a place where Kyle Lowry was the heartbeat of a Toronto team. And really just that franchise they had an identity already, We the North thing, and he just kind of enhanced it. And I think that's a big reason why. I mean, apart with him and Paul George not being able to stay on the freaking basketball floor, the other part is that Kawhi Leonard doesn't have any interest in establishing a culture. And you can say plenty about Hunter Dickinson as a college basketball player. He spends a lot of time talking crap and that's not exactly creating culture. Anyways, that's all I'll say. I just think that's interesting, and it's totally to his credit that his recruitment became as big of a deal as it is. He played the system like a fiddle, and that's totally his prerogative, and he is probably a very rich man now because as a result. So good for him. That's not to say that he doesn't deserve that, but I just think it's interesting that it's not like he's going, like, there's a reason that you leave a team. There's a reason you leave a program, and Michigan being incredibly mediocre the last 2 seasons was part of that reason.
And that's where going to Kansas makes a lot of sense, because
I think so too.
You're right. If anybody can figure out, it's Bill Self.
Sure.
Because all of those concerns are 100% valid. You're talking about some other places, Kentucky's had their issues, obviously. Kyle Neptune is still, Villanova has a great culture. Kyle Neptune is still trying to kind of figure out how to turn that into his and adjust it to his personality. So you've got a little bit of concern there. Ed Cooley is trying to completely rebuild Georgetown. And I saw some people make this point of, is Hunter Dickinson the guy you want to be rebuilding and kind of setting your culture around year one for the reasons you just laid out? Kansas is just a well-oiled machine where there seems to be, it's hard to kind of mess it up with what they've got going. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense for that exact reason from that standpoint.
There you go. I've just realized it looks like I'm sitting in the dark because it's cloudy outside. When I sat down, it was light outside, and the natural light coming in was more than enough.
I was gonna say,
and now it looks like I'm sitting in a dungeon.
You're a big believer in natural light.
With my screen only being lit with my face only being lit by my computer screen. I'm not in a dungeon. It's actually 9:42 in the morning. It doesn't look like it, but it is. And I believe that's all I have for you. Got anything else?
No.
Cool. We'll be back next Monday, in fact, for another episode of the Jays Race podcast. Until then, we'll meet back here at that point. Until then, thank you so much for listening to this edition of the Jays Race podcast. Please subscribe to the pod on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter at Jays Race Pod, YouTube, vertical content in all types of forms, TikToks, YouTube Shorts, all that fun stuff. We'll be back on Monday in a week's time. Thank you so much for listening to this edition of the Jays for Days podcast. I'm Josh. He's Josh. And we will see you